Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Josh Ferrari. Thanks for being on the show, Josh.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. We've kind of come full circle here. I've listened to your show a lot, and so it's really nice to be on this end of the show now instead of the listening end.
Well, it's neat. I'm hearing that more and more where guys and gals have been listening, and now they're doing deals or they're growing their business, and then they become a guest. So it's really neat to see that happen. So welcome to the show. I look forward to hearing more about your experience and your growth of your business and what you've done. But a little about Josh. He's a multifamily syndicator based out of Mobile, Alabama, with experience in raising private capital, locating, negotiating, and acquiring value-add multifamily assets, and teaching others how to follow in his footsteps. His ability to raise private capital has gotten him the title of primary capital raiser at over $6 million raised in his 3-year real estate investing journey. So Josh, welcome to the show. I know there's many that are listening that are trying to do the same thing that you have done and accomplish what you've accomplished in a short period of time. And so I think it's important, we spend a couple minutes just to figure out, a little about your background before multifamily syndication, and let's work through that just a little bit. And then I do want us to dive into just the investor relations side and how you do that well.
Yeah. So a little bit about my background. I'm an aircraft technician by trade. I do that. I'm still working full-time in aviation. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and moved down here about 3.5 years ago to start my career as a technician. I always thought I was going to be in the W-2 world for just ever, really. I was going to climb the corporate ladder, get my experience down here, because a lot of people call MROs a sweatshop, which is what I work at, and then eventually go work at like FedEx or UPS in a bigger company. But then about 6 months after having moved out of my parents' house, moving down here, kind of starting my career, my dad calls me one day and tells me, "Hey, your mom and I are going to start flipping houses." And I'm like, "What the heck? You guys are going to start flipping houses?" Like, first of all, I know you're not wealthy. Like, where's the money coming from? How does all this work? I had so many questions to wrap my head around. First of all, the fact that they were wanting to flip houses, and then how they were going to do that. So after like a 4-hour conversation, my interest was piqued, and I was like, learning I could make more than my annual salary in like one transaction was mind blowing. I'm like, man, there's something to this. I didn't think I wanted to do flipping at the time, but I said, obviously there's something about real estate that I need to dive into. So started, reading books, listening to podcasts like yours and Bigger Pockets and a bunch of different other ones, going to local real estate meetups. There was 2 that we had here in Mobile and one we had in Pensacola, trying to learn as much as I could. And then I got started in wholesaling, did that for about 5 or 6 months. Really wasn't for me. I ended up not ever being able to close any deals. We had like 8 or 9 that we got under contract that we were trying to flip, but never had anyone buy anything. So we thought, well, we're kind of throwing the money away on marketing. Let's just save that and buy something, because that's what we wanted to do anyway. So that's what we did. We bought a 4-plex. About 2 months after that, we house hacked it and syndicated it. It was a very interesting model, and I would not recommend it to anyone, but it was it was great experience. And
you syndicated it?
I quote unquote syndicated it before I knew what syndication was. It wasn't the standard model of syndication. It was more just like, "Hey, Dad, I need some money to pay for this down payment," because we did a 203K FHA loan on it. So I had all the money for the renovations and everything else. He just helped me with the down payment, but he didn't get any quarterly distributions. He didn't get K1s. He didn't get any of that stuff. It's just like, "Hey, I'll give you a piece of equity, and when we sell it, that's what you'll get." And so that's how I structured it before I knew what syndication was, and he was happy with it. We actually just went full cycle with that deal, and he ended up getting all his money back in like a 50% return after like a 2.5-year period. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible either. Great first experience. So then fast forward a little bit, I ended up finding my business partner, and we did a 21-unit single family portfolio syndication together. And then we were realizing, obviously, multifamily is where we need to go. We need the economies of scale. We need all those properties to be in one spot so we can have property management and maintenance and everything else. And so then fast forward about another year, we found a third partner. Now there's three of us. We closed a 42 unit multifamily apartment complex at the end of last year, and we got another 34 units under contract before we close that.
Nice. I'm making some notes because that's some stuff I want to ask you about there. So what about this? I wanted to back up just a little bit. The house hack. Were you the one that was living there, or who was? And why would you not recommend that model?
Well, maybe that was a poor choice of words. Maybe I would recommend it to someone if it makes sense for you, and if you can get the financing right, and if the deal's right. I think for my particular situation, just being that it was our first deal ever, first house that we bought as a married couple, first investment that we bought, first multifamily we bought because it was a fourplex, first, renovation that we did, first house hat. It was like first everything. And so just jumping into all of that at such a behemoth sized deal for a newbie, it was a whirlwind of problems, and it was a 100-year-old house. So already we were buying problems right there. And the 203K FHA loan was absolutely horrendous for us. What was only supposed to take 6 months to renovate took us a year and a half. And a lot of that was because of paperwork and making sure that everything was good. We had to fire our first contractor, and it took 5 months to fire the first contractor and get the new contractor signed in to all the paperwork and ready to go. And we already had the second contractor before we fired the first, but they couldn't touch the property for 5 months until the paperwork was done. So I was like,
give us a couple things there that you would have done differently to alleviate some of those issues. I think I can relate to, actually my wife and I hadn't been married the first year or a whole year yet. And we bought a house. We're in the middle of remodeling and bought a couple triplexes, and we're self-managing. Lots of brain damage there I talk about often, but in the first year of marriage, right? And so I would imagine, that's a similar situation, even though we weren't living there. But give us a couple of things that, would have helped you been better prepared, or maybe you and your spouse, or that you would do different personally.
I wish I would have known more about the intricacies of the FHA program, like the 203K FHA program, as far as how the paperwork goes and what needs to be in line to move to the next step. Because I thought that I knew everything at closing after we had gone through all the steps. It took us about 4 or 5 months just to get to closing, which should have been a red flag right there of like, holy cow, there's going to be a lot of paperwork throughout this process. But I'm thinking the contractor that we had, that they had mentioned the idea of needing to fire someone and bringing someone else on, but they hadn't stated the fact that it was going to take such a significant amount of time. They were just like, here's the process of what's going to have to happen. And I'm thinking, all right, if it does happen, worst case scenario, it takes like a month, can't be that bad. And I also thought, like probably everyone else, that, well, I'm not going to need to fire my first contractor. They're going to be great. They're going to do me right. They're going to get everything done on time. The first contractor ended up tripling the timeline and doubling the budget on the first unit that they renovated. And so it was like, obviously I can't keep these people around. They're not timely and they could care less about my budget. So it definitely the paperwork side of it all. I wish I would have known the processes and procedures and the steps that were going to be involved, because it might have veered me away from wanting to take that loan program and instead maybe making it a legitimate syndication model, or stopping and saying, hey, if this isn't something possible that we could do, maybe I need to buy a duplex instead of a fourplex. Like maybe this isn't the right deal. So just figuring a lot of those things out before just kind of jumping into it, because my personality, I'm in a very optimistic, like a go-getter. Let's just go do it. Let's not have the analysis paralysis. Let's not worry about the what ifs. Obviously, we're going to have a little bit of conservativeness built into some things and definitely do some analysis. But being that was our first deal, there wasn't much analysis that I knew how to do. It was just like, yeah, it looks like a good deal from everything I've ever learned. Let's just do it.
Okay. So similar to me as well. It sounds like you would have educated yourself a little more, maybe beforehand, before jumping in. So you understood the process a little more and what to expect. Was there, and quickly before we move on, was there any kind of mentor involved? Anybody helping you through that? Or was it just you trying to kind of steamroll ahead by yourself?
Yeah, at the very beginning of that, there was no mentor. I had a couple of contractors that I knew that I had met from my local real estate meetups that I thought were going to help me with this because they were who I brought along when we were kind of doing the initial underwriting and figuring out if this was a deal we wanted to get under contract and that we wanted to pursue. And then none of those, I had like two or three of them that I knew and kind of trusted, and none of them wanted to actually take on this deal. And that's another thing. Like that should have been another red flag of why don't they want to take on this deal? What are they seeing that's going to be such like a behemoth about this that they're unable to handle it? And so I guess it would be that.
Okay. Well, I want to move on because we got a lot to cover. So I want to get to the 21 unit, your first syndication. You met your business partner. Give us a couple key things that helped you to get to that first syndication, and what was your role in that?
So it's funny. The 21 unit was, yes, the first legitimate syndication, but I kind of came in on the back end. So I met my partner actually through Bigger Pockets. He reached out to me and we met at a local coffee shop here. He lives in Gulf Shores and I live on the west side of the Bay in Mobile. We met up at a coffee shop. And the initial...
How did he reach out to you, or why did he know of you to even reach out? Just because you all live close and he looked you up?
That's what I would think. I think he just found me on Bigger Pockets and saw that I was in Mobile and that my tagline was like that I was trying to be a syndicator and trying to be in multifamily. And he's like, oh, it's super cool. I'm working on some stuff and that's kind of what I'm trying to get into. And so we just met up, but the initial purpose of meeting up was just to kind of know each other and learn more about other people in the area that are doing these kinds of things. There wasn't any thought, at least in my head initially, of like, this could be my business partner. It was just like, yeah, just be cool to meet someone else. And then it wasn't until a few months after that he had this 21 unit that he had gotten under contract and that he was primarily working on and raising most of the money on, that he was like, hey, how'd you like to come on and kind of fly under my wing, I guess, and kind of see how everything goes. And then we'll kind of see how we work together and you can maybe help me raise a little bit of money. And that'll be... Had
he syndicated before? Had he done this before?
He had not. He had not done a big syndication before. He'd done a lot of flips. He flips a few houses a month. He had a lot of experience in construction and contracting and just like real estate in general, but he hadn't done any large scale portfolio or he might have raised a little bit of money here and there for flips, but he had never done any legitimate syndication. So we both kind of were just jumping into this like, yeah, I mean, you've got way more experience than me, even if it's not syndication specific. And I'd love to help you out and kind of see on the back end how all this stuff works. And so that was kind of how it happened. I just came in on the back end, didn't really know a whole lot. Like he helped me just like look at the numbers and look at the deal. And that allowed me to kind of see how things were underwritten and what kind of made sense. And then he actually structured the syndication differently than most, where they weren't equity partners. They were debt partners.
Okay.
So
yes.
We had all of these investors come in and they only got like a piece of debt, basically, that once they were paid off, that was it. And I was thinking to myself, because all I knew at that point about syndication was that they had to be, or what I thought, they had to be equity partners. And he's like, no, we're going to keep all the equity and they're just going to be debt partners. I'm like, man.
So did you have a lender involved as well? Or did you find investors for the debt for the whole thing?
We had a lender involved as well.
Okay. So then your investors would kind of have a second lien on the property. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Kind of like a second lien position. And I wasn't really able to bring much of any money. I might've brought like $20,000 to that deal from like my parents or something. And he brought I think it was another $200,000 or $300,000 he brought on his end. And I was just dumbfounded that he could even raise that much money at the time and that all of this stuff was possible. It was all so new to me that I was trying to add as much value as I could, but it was hard because it was a first for everything for me.
Who were these investors? I mean, for them to be willing to, to invest and just have debt, it'd be debt investors. What was their projected return, and who are they that's willing to do that versus investing on the equity side?
Yeah, obviously he had the closer relationship with these people. So what I know of them is just that they were close people that he knew already from just having grown up. And he had already been in real estate for about a decade at the time, doing mainly the flips and stuff. So he had that track record of success. And I guess he obviously had met a ton of people coming up from there to where he was then, of just meeting people and it was all different kinds of people. He had a lawyer in there. He had his real estate agent was in there that he does some of his flips with. She was rolling some money in, and he had like some guy that he knew from way back when, because he was born and raised in the Mobile Gulf Shores area. So he just, I guess, knew everyone naturally from growing up here. He knew some guy that like started a bank, had a bunch of money, that was willing to be a debt partner. And it was just all these different people that I'm like, how do you know these people? And it just came from age and experience and time.
He had built a network.
Yeah,
Sounds
exactly.
like he had built a network, and that, it helped you all to close this first deal. And so I want to jump way forward because I don't want us to run out of time before we get to some details now that you have learned on the investor relations side. Obviously, that's such a massive part of our business. It's something I spend just a ton amount of time on. We have numerous team members that are just focused on investor relations. So I understand the need for that. And we stress it so much personally. I want to hear some things that you've learned, some things you do differently now. Obviously, you were learning then, and you've learned so much since then, to be able to raise quite a bit of capital, or a lot, in a short period of time. So get us started there. Some things you've learned, some things you do now that you've learned, to help speed this process up for the listeners as well.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with kind of building those relationships with investors and then getting them to agree to invest, and then keeping that ongoing relationship after kind of that onboarding process. So initially getting these investors, growing that network, what I did, July of last year, 2020, I did a 30-day to 500K like money raising challenge. Previous to that, I had only raised about $100,000. And so I never really saw myself as much of a capital raiser. I always thought I was just going to kind of handle the investor relations, like communication side of things, just because I love talking to people. And then also maybe some acquisitions and financial analysis. That was just going to kind of be my niche and my role in the GP team. Well, I started this challenge. It was $100 to enter. I was like, worst case scenario, I'll pay $100, learn nothing, and lose $100. So did I really lose anything? So I'm going to enter this challenge. I'm going to see what it's all about. Well, first day we got a video every day, and he said, you're going to go live on Facebook every day for the next 30 days. Man, I was so scared. I hated social media at that point. I had the podcasts, my podcast that I run, Creative Capital, but it's different. It's different on a podcast because it's just you and one other person. And so on the live video, I'm like, man, I've got like 1,000, 1,500 friends. They can all see me. What if I trip up? What if I don't say the right thing? All these thoughts started coming to my head. Like, what am I even going to say for 30 days to these people? And then the video was just basically telling you what you needed to say. You needed to be authentic. You needed to just be yourself. Don't always talk about the how-tos of real estate. Like, hey, you can make a bunch of money. Hey, I've got this awesome deal. Hey, give me money. Hey, IRAs, 401ks. Don't always talk about that, because you're going to turn people off. They're going to be turned away from your constant like marketing, like guerrilla marketing that you're doing for your social media. So talk about yourself, talk about your family, your faith, your hobbies, what you like to do, your dog, your kids, the fact that the AC broke in your house. I had the randomest, most weird, like Facebook lives. And the ones that I was so not expecting any response, I was just doing the live for the sake of needing to do it for the day. Those were the ones that got the biggest response. Those are the ones that people were like, oh yeah. Like one video, we were in the fourplex, 100-year-old house. We're in the second floor, no insulation, heat of the summer. Our AC goes out. It's like 90 degrees in the unit. I'm like, guys, it's 90 degrees in here. And I'm like flipping the camera to the thermostat, and everyone's commenting like, oh my gosh, like that's horrible. Or I had that happen to me on a flip house, or I couldn't imagine, and all this stuff. And I guess it was just the idea of being relatable allowed all these people to begin like liking me and like and trusting me. And then the biggest thing with the live videos that we did was people had no idea what I was doing. There was a ton of people that I followed that didn't even know I was an aircraft technician. And I had been an aircraft technician for like 3 years at the time. They were like, I didn't even know you were in aviation. I thought you were doing something else like in the military or something, because that was originally what I was going to do when I was initially going into college. And because I just had gotten on social media and just told people, I didn't care. I didn't really like social media. And so just letting people know what I was doing and the fact that I was investing in multifamily and that there were these opportunities, people started reaching out to me wanting to know more about it and more about me. And so fast forward to the end of the 30 days, and I was able to actually raise $6 million in 30 days of this like money raising challenge, where I thought I wasn't even going to get to 500K. And then here I am at 6 million. I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like, obviously I have some kind of skill here to raise money. So maybe that's my niche. Maybe that's where I need to go. So then.
So tell me, I want to dive in there a little bit, because did somebody else challenge you to do the 30-day challenge on Facebook, and even the 30-day to 500K? Was that somebody else challenging you, or was that just something you came up with?
Well, it was someone else. It was a guy named Bill Allen. He actually was like beta testing this idea of this challenge that he wanted to do. And so I was a part of
I know Bill. Bill's been on the show.
Yeah, I was a part of this beta group, and I ended up raising the most amount of money in the 30 days. And so he had me on as he had me create this like commercial for him. Then he posted that on Facebook, and that got like 25,000 views. And I got even more traffic from that. And so he was the one that did the challenge and posted on Facebook. And I'm like, shoot, I'm going to try it.
What was the key things there to raising $6 million in 30 days? Was it the Facebook Lives and then people connecting with you and you following up? What was that process?
The absolute number one key thing, well, we'll say there's two. The first one was the Facebook Lives, was definitely getting out there and getting people that you already kind of know, because they're already following you on social media, getting them to know what you do, getting them to know more about you, talking about personal stuff and just everyday life, and not always business. Out of those 30 days, I probably talked 5 or 6 of those days specifically about multifamily real estate and how you can get into syndication and the fact that you can invest through a 401k or something like that. Every other day was just randomness, complete random personalness. And so that would be number one. And then number two, I was able to go, I probably through about 25 to 30 different investors, I probably raised about $1 million. And then from $1 million to $5 million was strictly referrals, strictly asking every person that I talked to at the end of the conversation, instead of ending it with pleasantries like, hey, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for considering joining us. We'll definitely stay in touch and I'll keep you updated with any deals we got, something like that. Instead of ending it with that, I ended every conversation with, hey, is there anyone else that you might know that might be interested in an opportunity like this? And more often than not, probably 98% of the time, people were like, yeah, I do know someone. And it wasn't just the people that had agreed to invest with me either. Like the people that said, yeah, I have 25,000 or 50,000 or whatever to invest. It wasn't just those people that had referrals. It was the people that the timing wasn't right, or no, they weren't interested in real estate at all. Or yes, they were interested in real estate, but maybe they needed to build up their capital stack, or the deal wasn't right, whatever. Those people that were saying no at the time also had referrals. And so then you talk to that person, and then that person has a referral. And it's like this endless referral network every time you talk to the next person. And you always want to make sure that you got a warm introduction, because you could get the referral. They could give you their phone number, and then you call this person up and you're like, hey, so-and-so told me you got $50,000 to invest in real estate. How'd you like to give it to me? That's not going to work. That's just totally not going to work. So I needed a warm introduction of either all three of us getting on the phone, or some kind of Zoom call or an email introduction that just kind of eased me into that person's life, so then I could take over from there. And that's kind of how that conversation started. And so the biggest thing that got me from $1 million to $5 million was actually, it was a few people, but one guy in particular had $3 million, and it came from a referral. Just asking one guy that had about $50,000 to invest. He's like, yeah, I know a guy. I think he does deals. He's been doing deals a while, and so on and so forth. He's in like the oil and gas industry or something. And I talked to the guy, and at the end of the conversation, he's got 3 million. I couldn't even fathom that was a number that people just had available to invest. And it just came from asking for a referral.
Wow. No, that's incredible. What great value you've just provided. Josh, are you willing to come back and let's do a second segment to this? Because I feel like there's a lot of value here. Are you open to that?
I'm so
all right, the listeners. So we'll call this part 1, and we'll do a part 2 to this as well. Because this is perfect content for so many of the listeners. Just understanding how you did this. So I think it's worth us doing a second show on this. And I've got a bunch more questions I want to ask you. First, thanks again just for your time. You'll see part 2 to this tomorrow. Josh, go ahead and tell listeners how they can get in touch with you. And the best way to do that. But then, like I said, you'll be back tomorrow for us to finish this conversation.
Okay. Yeah. Best way to get in touch with me is you can go to our website, ferraricapital.com. We've got a monthly newsletter we send out. You can go to our partnership tab at the top, sign up for that. You'll be updated on any deals we have, as well as get the newsletter. We've also got a blog that I haven't been super up to date with, but it does have a lot of previous blogs on it. What I am up to date with, though, on a weekly basis is our podcast, Creative Capital. It's on our website. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. Anywhere you watch your shows, feel free to go check out our podcast. And also social media. We've got a YouTube channel that's got the video versions of all of our podcasts. So feel free to go check that out, Ferrari Capital. Or you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn and Facebook is just Josh Ferrari. And then Instagram is Ferrari Capital.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.